Our next speaker is Marisa Wilson. Marisa Wilson's work focuses on historical, political, economic, and cultural economies of agri-food networks, with a focus on Cuba, Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, and transatlantic sugar networks linking the West Indies and Scotland. She uses ethnographic, oral history, and visual digital methods to increase understandings of food production and consumption in post-colonial contexts. Her work on Caribbean food economies illustrates cultural, historical, and political economic reasons behind food preferences, agricultural land use, and unfavorable outcomes of nutrition and other interventions. She is currently exploring the use of digital methods such as story maps to create people-led understandings and alternatives to corporate food networks.
Good morning. Delighted to be here and to present this work. Funded by the AHRC, Living Histories of Sugar was a 3-year collaboration between performance artists and academics, including myself, Diana Payton, and Natalie Bertaud from the University of Edinburgh, Robin Sloan from Abertay University, Lynette Goddard from Royal Holloway, and Mary Caton Lingold from Virginia Commonwealth University. The project explored what scholars and performance artists can do when they come together to discover not only the brutal effects of the sugar plantation, but also the unfinished nature of its global geographies. The performance artists, they're shown here on the screen, transformed the archival and historical record into musical and biographical scenes that made up the final 50-minute play, which was performed in Kingston, Greenock, and Edinburgh in October 2022. We began to develop scenes for the play in the spring of 2022 during a week-long co-creation workshop. Here we co-created songs and biographical stories that worked against the grain of written, oral, and visual archives. In advance of the workshop, the 5 artists were sent archival booklets with songs or biographical stories from the archives. They were asked to choose 2 or 3 of the songs or stories that spoke to them and that they could envision capturing on stage, which were then workshopped in Edinburgh. We started the workshop with a session on Why Am I Here?, reflecting on our personal relation to the theme of sugar and/or slavery, which helped us to shape the co-creation process. The project and performance engaged artists and audiences alike, with diverse generational links to sugar and slavery, and also included the sugar stories of older people in Greenock, Scotland, whose oral histories had been collected in an earlier project. A key aim was to explore how historically marginalized peoples, such as the descendants of enslaved peoples and the wives of Scotland's sugar refinery workers, but also diverse audiences in Jamaica and Scotland, could be involved in the reinterpretation of complex and contested sugar and slavery histories. The research included audience reactions in Jamaica and Scotland. At the end of the play, we gave our audiences an opportunity to tell their own stories of sugar, prompted by a provocation. How do you feel? Sweet, sticky, or bitter? So the play was actually structured around these central tropes. And I'm going to show some brief clips from the play in this presentation, which will be structured around these tropes. In the first scene of the play, we see Jodie, dressed as an enslaved woman, distribute Scottish boiled sweets to the audience in Edinburgh, whilst Yvonne and Marva sing a popular nursery rhyme in Scotland called Ali Bally Bee.
Poor wee Annie's greeting tea, say welcome poor wee mammy dee, but give them a penny a tween and tea, to buy their coulter's candy. It's size stuff to make you jump. If you jump, you're sure to fall. Coulters can be a penny for all.
Come on, children, come get your candy. Whatever streets that suit your fancy. You got the sweetness from the sugar cane, but my cane is bitter. It brings me pain. You got a pocket full of pennies to buy your treats, but my pockets are empty and I'm on the streets. When you cry, your mommy's gonna dry your tears, but nobody never saved me in 400 years. Who will listen to my story? Who will hear my voice? This brutal life was never my choice. So eat your candy sprinkled with delight. I will bear my pain, suffer through the night.
So you can see that Marva has changed her own lyrics that she brought to this song and changed the key, which signaled the shift from sweet to bitter in the play. So in this scene that begins the bitter section of the play, Marva and Yvonne sing their version of Massa by Me, an African chant from Barbados.
Massa by me, he won't kill me, oh. Massa by me, he won't kill me, oh. Massa by me, he won't kill me, oh. For he killed me, he shipped me regular. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey, oh. For I live with a bad man, oh Lord.
Sorry to have to cut it short. So this song is followed by two scenes depicting the lives of enslaved and free women whose dramatization is inspired by Diana Payton's research. And you'll see in the background, I'm sure you've noticed that there's visual imagery of some National Library of Scotland materials, moving images, as we saw in the first scene, of making sweets in Dundee. And this one was actually images that are available for free on slaveryimages.org. So the first bitter scene is based on a letter written by Mary Williamson to her former owner, Houghton James, who lived in England. In it, she pleads to retain use of her lands, which she bought on the Houghton Tower estate to grow food for herself, a free Black woman, and her two sisters still enslaved. The letter was provoked by the brutalities of her sister's overseer, Mr. Kirkcaldy, probably a Scot, who had set fire to her garden and house. So I won't have time to show this scene, but if anyone's interested, I can send them individually a link to the play. The second bitter scene is based on an incident in the life of Sarah Williams, a formerly enslaved woman who lived and worked in Southwest Jamaica in the early 19th century. After the death of her mother, Williams was forbidden to stay with her mother's body. Her owner ordered that she return to work immediately and then insulted her. Peyton argues that from historical evidence, insulting language targeted at enslaved women was usually sexualized and animalistic, more so than the insulting language targeted at men. So you see that costume and set design artwork in both scenes was created by the actress Jody Lin Chow, a visual artist of Jamaican Chinese heritage, who went on to use this work for her own art installations in New York. In the sticky parts of the play, we sought to emphasize how people in the UK and the Caribbean were differently placed by the sugar industry. These included scenes derived from James Greenwood's late 19th century account of the working environment of an Irish sugar worker in London. Actor Michael Nicholson's and he also relays his own personal memories of working in Tate and Lyle in Jamaica in the factory in the 1970s. So in this scene that we're going to see just now, the actor and musician Philip Blacksage Murray recites the lyrics of an original walking song written by Francis Dunlap from Greenock as part of the Absent Voices project.
A thousand curses on sugar, which robbed the Irishman of his eyes. Every man in the vanilla is saddened. The women are tearful, on their knees, lamenting and praying. Isabella is heartbroken, devastated for that happy, cheerful lad, young James. Musical and well-known, now sightless, without a spark in his eyes. I am here among the Irish and the lowlanders, among the shops, and I wish I could be back in that fragrant glen where I was young and carefree. Far from the smoke and soot and grime, far from Greenock, that great sugar town.
Will you join with us? We're going to walk the tweeds together. Hiri horanno, hiri snaruravo, horanno, uravo, mile maravaskeran chuka, hiri horanno, hiri snaruravo, horanno, uravo, yakkan cheran okkan sulam.
And by the way, we constantly communicate to the actors and the performance artists and myself, and they're very much aware that I'm giving this presentation today, and they've given me their blessing to represent them in this way. So in regards to this clip, it really aligns with our objective to recenter marginalized perspectives. And as you can see, the play included Gaelic as well as calypso music. The last clip is a calypso, an original calypso. Work songs of enslaved people, contemporary songs, and even nursery rhymes related to the theme of sugar. The original storytelling and music performed on stage was inspired by the musical mastery of oppressed people on either side of the Atlantic, who used music not only to rejuvenate their culture, but also to create a form of insider knowledge that could be used in the struggle against colonialism. In this final scene, we'll see another sticky part of the play when Black Sage performs Hard, Hard Day, which is a song that he wrote for the play. The scene invites audiences to contrast the wealthy financiers and merchants who got rich on the backs of enslaved peoples with the workers in the factories who may have lost eyes or limbs given the dangerous conditions of sugar house work in the UK.
Over his job, and if there were 3 on a ship and one was on.
It's up.
Yeah. So tell me, what are some of the things that annoy you?
There are fortunes that were made from sugar and the slave trade, well-hidden racketeering, open profiteering, who owned sugar companies in so many countries. Crime lands and real estate, oh, the profits were so great. Some were great philanthropists, but some practiced avarice. Very little did they spend to uplift their fellow men. Not a library, school, or hall, not a court or hospital. They were it all, and they stood tall. Creed back garden in Glasgow, and the Pollock households too. Kuntian Public Castle, Guyson House and Yard, Remack Estate, properties both large and great.
By contrasting the positionalities of sugar financiers and enslavers on one hand, and sugar workers and enslaved peoples on the other, Black Sage's Calypso, Hard, Hard Day, and the other sticky parts of the play may have inadvertently reopened parts of the internal colonialism debate in Scotland, especially for the Scottish audiences. As Stephen Mullen and Ewan Gibbs argue, the narrative that Scots were both perpetrators of slavery but also victims of colonialism and the aftermath of the Highland clearances and working class oppression has perpetuated historical blind spots and recreated divisions based on what David Alston calls a kind of competitive victimhood. This kind of thinking may have influenced some of the audience reactions in Greenock. After some reflections on the role of Scots in slavery and the experiences of the enslaved peoples represented in the play, the discussion turned to the occupational hazards of the sugar industry, the bodies, in part or whole, lost to its industrial machinery, the experiences of relatives who had lost their lives and health due to factory work. Yet rather than comparing the experiences of sugar's victims, the play sought to juxtapose people with different relationships to the global sugar industry on either side of the Atlantic. In her book on the political writings of 2 subaltern traditions of racial thought in the Americas, Juliet Hooker developed the concept of juxtaposition as a methodological alternative to comparison. She argues that, by definition, juxtaposition places 2 disparate objects side by side, and it is by being viewed simultaneously that the viewer's understanding of each object is transformed. The metaphor of counterpoint in dance performance provides a useful illustration of how juxtaposition works as a method. In dance, counterpoint is when 2 or more choreographic fragments with different uses of space, time, and/or body are executed simultaneously on the same stage. The various elements on stage thus do not appear to be speaking directly to each other, but by being viewed side by side, a relation between the pieces is revealed that would not be apparent if they were staged separately or sequentially. Juxtaposition thus allows us to ask, what happens when people and experiences that are viewed as disparate are staged as proximate? What insights are revealed? And this is where I'll turn to the audience for questions later. or perhaps for insights about whether and how a play about sugar stories from across the Atlantic can achieve this aim of juxtaposition, rather than further inciting debates around comparative victimhood in Scotland. Thank you.